Hey, thanks for jumping on today. We have fun with this. I always like talking to industry and non-industry leaders. I talk to people from time to time that aren't in financial services, real estate finance, mortgage. And it's just fun to hear people's progression and their stories. And so thanks for joining us. If you want to maybe take 30 seconds and do a little elevator pitch of who Stuart Crawford is, and then we'll get into who Stuart Crawford really is after you say that.
Gosh, I don't know if I've ever been asked for an elevator pitch on myself. That's a tough one.
It's the most important thing. Then people are asked, they're starting in the wrong place.
Well, you're obviously a pro. So, all right, I'll 30 seconds. Who's got the stopwatch? I usually can't keep it within my time.
Let's go. Thomas will keep us on track. Ready, go.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, Thomas, go on 3.
Go. All right. Born in San Antonio, Texas, at 9 years old, left to go to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Went from, grew up in New Mexico, middle school, high school. Some of my greatest friends in the world I still hang out with are from there, not live there anymore. Met my wife in high school there. Left Albuquerque to go to Arizona State University, ASU, in outside Phoenix, Arizona, and never left. So I'm still in Arizona, been here a long time. I've got an amazing wife who's my best friend. We've been together a long time. I've got 3 kids. My oldest is Colton, my oldest son. My middle daughter is Ava, she's 7, and my youngest son, Hank the Tank, is 4.
First of all, great names for your kids. My wife, so our boys are Abe and Tate. So clearly 1 syllable is all we have. Like we can't go any further than 1 syllable. Hank was on the top of the list. She was struggling. She wanted a Hank real bad. So sounds like
you got some work to do.
Yeah, I think we're done.
It's such an all-American name, Hank. Good old Hank.
It's a strong name. And for Nikki was adamant. It's 1 syllable. Our kids are 1 syllable.
It's funny because when you tell people that, they go, "Oh, it's short for Henry," and I'm like, "No, it's not Henry. It's Hank."
It's just Hank. It's like my Abe. He's not Abraham. Now he was named after my grandfather, who is Abraham, but we just stopped at Abe. It's not Abraham.
Make it easy.
So did you say you met your wife in high school?
I met my wife in high school, but we didn't start dating we didn't date in high school, but we were friends in high school. We've actually got, pictures of us in, high school dances in the same picture, but like we've got different dates and the whole deal. It's kind of funny.
So how did that come back around?
She moved out to Arizona a few years after I did, and we were always friends. It's just one of those things that, evolved from there. And then in our late 20s, it, turned into something different. And then next thing you knew, we got married and had 3 kids, and here I am.
It's kind of like recruiting. You played the long game, right?
Exactly.
You built the relationship in high school, and then the drip campaign started without you even realizing that's what was happening. And then the timing was right.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm very lucky, man. She's awesome.
That's awesome. I love that. Something I think a lot of people, we get so busy and we run so fast that we forget that, the good stuff lives in the relationships, and the things that last a long time. I was on a work trip last week, and 2 groups looking to maybe come together. So a bit of a conversion or roll up or acquisition, whatever we want to call it. And the one of the leaders on one side spent an enormous amount of time getting to know everybody, really family and faith, and what do you do outside of the business, and what motivates you. And at the end of it, one of their executives said, "Hey, I want to thank you for approaching it this way. But my question is, was there a point in your career where you learned that this was the proper way to approach it?" And he said, "No, what I learned was that the other way is the wrong way." And I just kind of like because he was saying, if we get into pricing and compensation and transition, how am I supposed to weigh those things when I don't even know what I'm going towards or away from yet? And I just love how simply he put it, which was, it's not so much that I learned the right way to do it. I figured out very quickly the wrong way to do it.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. It's funny. I have a similar experience when I first got in the business, and that's a whole long story in itself, but I quit the mortgage business, came back in, and reluctantly, I was 22, and it was a time when I thought everybody was a yes man and it didn't seem very professional, and I didn't like it. And I had a friend's like, you got to interview at this place. So I go to this interview, and the interview that I remember, he takes me to lunch, and we didn't talk about anything business. He asked about my family, all those things. And I remember coming back and my dad going, how'd it go? Like, it was awesome. I'm like, it was kind of weird though. He's like, well, why was it weird? I'm like, because we didn't even talk about the job, the mortgage industry. Like, he literally just asked me about like you guys, and that's all we talked about. And I'm like, it was actually kind of cool. And then, so I learned very early on how impactful that was for me personally. And so I think that's something that we still to this day take at heart when we meet with people. It's like, I almost try to avoid talking business as long as I can. I'm like, if they want to start talking it, they can bring it up, but we'll just chit chat about whatever until they're ready, you know?
That would lead me to believe that you probably have teammates that you've been with them, they've been with you for a long time.
That's correct. Yeah, we are definitely like a family, as cliche as I know that sounds, but we don't have a revolving door. Everyone is beside me that I'm lucky to have has been here a long time.
Do you think what you just said is the primary reason for that?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if it's the primary reason. I would think it has something to do with it for sure. I think that the primary reason we have such staying power with our employees is just because it's kind of, I guess, it piggybacks off what you and I are talking about, Eric. It's we really look at it as a family, and that, look, this job isn't easy. No job's easy, right? So, and this is the only one I know though. So this job isn't easy. So if we're going to run through brick walls together, we need to do it together. We're going to be in the foxhole together. And that being said, where's the life balance, and what do we do outside of work, and where do we have fun? Because there's no sense in making it miserable. We're all going to do things sometimes day to day we don't necessarily want to do, but if we're doing it with people that make us laugh. I mean, we just got out of a meeting where I was telling somebody, he's like, I sometimes get worried about working with my friends because I don't want to make a decision because of friends. And I said, that's a great way to look at it. I said, but I'll tell you the other side of that is I'm lucky enough that my business partners and everyone around me are my friends. And some didn't start that way. They started as colleagues and then we became friends. But that means that every single meeting we have, there's always laughter. There's never a meeting where we're not laughing or having at least some version of fun, no matter how serious the topic is, right? And that just makes it kind of worth it, right? So
are there things that you guys do consistently as a team that's not work related?
We need to do a better job at that, in all honesty, but yeah.
So by the way, so do I. I've said that for years and I still haven't fixed it.
It's a tough one, man, but but I'm fortunate that we have someone in a corporate position that has been with me a long time, but we repurposed her role. And this is one of her silos that she's tasked with, is to just keep us on track with, it can be simple, right? It doesn't have to be every week, because we all know that gets overwhelming because life's busy, but we try to do things every couple months. With the last one we did a bowling deal and we had a great time and everyone's, just having fun. So we're trying to get better at it, as we go. So.
Well, I mean, part of being a good leader is finding someone else that can fill the gaps that you're not particularly good at, or you don't prioritize, or it's also tough in the business that you're in, where you have different types of, I'll call them business partners, right? You have non-sales support that's paid and motivated a particular way. You have commissioned people that generate revenue that are paid and motivated a particular way. And I know over the years, there's been people that I've worked with, and I think I'm like this, quite frankly, where, it's fine if you want to go to lunch. I'm not going though. I'd rather work the extra 45 minutes or whatever, because that compounds over time and I'm going to see particular outcomes or results. That's not something that made other people happy or made me happy, but the stickiness is important, like getting to know each other and not always be in the same kind of environment. How, for context, for those that don't know you, like others, you built your business from scratch. I'm assuming you didn't have a family member or a friend that just said, hey, Stuart, come here. I've got $100 million book of business. Just stick your name on it and let's rock and roll. For context, how big did you grow your business and also the group's business at its peak?
Well, in my personal production peak, which, I somewhat hung that hat up relatively recently, but
right.
We peaked at probably, I don't quote me, probably plus or minus 220 million.
Okay.
In volume with a very small group. And I say that because that's probably, I'm not, the numbers are great. But I'm more proud of the efficiency of the model and being able to do it with a small head count and incorporating these things that you and I are talking about, and to still be able to push out that kind of volume where everybody's not pulling their hair out and feeling like they're working 24/7. That's something that I think about a lot, and I try to double down on those things as we move forward with Bison, with the new company. But yeah, that's where we topped out.
And I want to come back. I want to come back to the evolution of you starting to not walk away, but part from focusing on Stuart's personal book of business and then building a business, which is a little bit different, right? But go back. When you said there was a period of time where you got out of the business, when was that?
Well, here's the quickest version. So when I was a senior at ASU, I realized I should get a part-time job. And I literally opened up the school paper and was like, so I got a finance degree. What's related to business in any way, shape, or form, and what meets my school schedule, right? I'm looking for all the conveniences for me.
Right.
and I find this job being an ALO, an assistant loan officer to whatever this company is. I don't even know what that means, right? So I call them up, I go do the interview, I get the job. Turns out I'm in a call center. So I'm in a call center, and this is 2001. So I'm in a call center calling leads, cold leads, basically trying to set up appointments for loan officers. This was like kind of the first refi boom.
Yep.
And got relatively good at it, and kind of morphed. And then someone else hired me and said, hey, and so now I graduate college. I'm still looking for my real job. I wanted to be a stockbroker. There's a whole story why I didn't do that, but as I'm looking for my real job, I'm still staying in this mortgage space because it's paying me. And another guy hires me and says, hey, why don't you help me build a call center? So I help him build a call center. It was just a small one. And then from there, it morphed into, I was like, why don't I just be a loan officer? I think I could probably maybe do it. So then I started doing that for a small local company. And that's where I really got the bad taste in my mouth. It just the management, the leadership, the environment, the culture, it was all those things I told you. Just didn't feel professional, felt very slimy, for lack of a better way to say it. And this whole time I'm looking for the real job. So I quit, and I'm interviewing at pharmaceutical companies. Am I going to go that route? And a friend of a friend who is in the recruiting business says, hey, you need to go interview at this company. And I said, is it a mortgage company? And he says, yeah. I said, I'm not doing it. And he's like, I'm telling you, it's different. And I told him why I didn't want to do it. And he's like, I promise you, this company's different. It's privately owned, family owned. And he wouldn't leave me alone. So I finally was like, I'll do the interview just to get him off my back.
Right.
And then I went through 6 interviews. So it was like, I met branch manager guy, which is the one I told you about. Then I met him and his partner. Then I met the regional guy, and then I met another guy. And it was like it was a very disciplined approach to the interview process from their side that made me feel like, wow, they're like this is really a selection process. And I was nervous, right, at each of these interviews. And it made me feel like this is a real organization. These guys are running it the way that I would want something to be run, even though at that time I didn't have any clue what the hell that meant. But you know what I mean. So that
totally, yeah.
And that's that. I mean, that's how I got back in it. And I wasn't out of it for very long. And I was 23 at the time, and rest is history, I guess.
Well, I'm curious, based upon something you just said, what made you decide? So you go to college, in your brain, you're getting a degree in finance. You're thinking, I'm going to be a stockbroker. That's what I'm going to go do. What was it that changed that trajectory?
Well, I did an internship at Merrill Lynch the summer before I graduated. And right around that time was when the tech bubble burst. And I basically thought to myself, I was 21 years old. I looked like I was 18. And I was like, I'm going to go out there and sell guys twice, if not more, my age on putting their money in a market they just lost everything in. And when I obviously don't have any experience and I look like I'm a baby. And I literally, for that fact alone, I'm like, I just don't see that going very well for me. And I hadn't written it off. I mean, who knows, if I would have not taken the mortgage interview, would I maybe have gone back that way? I don't know. But it just didn't. It's like life, right? Life happens. The journey happens. You don't always choose the way it goes.
No, you don't know what's around the next corner. That is for sure. So I was poking around on your background, and you and I have talked about this a little bit before, I think. You were with a company, and maybe I have the timing wrong, but I believe you were with a company that when the financial crash happened, 2008, 7. So that company went bankrupt. Did you go through that bankruptcy with that company? And obviously right now we're in a market that's super challenging for the housing industry, which of course is impacting mortgage. It's not the same thing. The reasons are totally different, but as it relates to individual contributors' compensation, reductions of force, layoffs, I mean, some similar things are happening. Take me back to your brain during that period of time. Did you ever consider doing something else?
It's a great question. So the company that I finally landed on that we've been talking about, they got out of the game at perfect timing, by the way, about a year and a half before that collapse began. Okay. And then we sold out to a much larger organization. So we went from 300 loan officers to 3,000 loan officers nationwide, huge publicly traded company, worth billions of dollars. And I only say that to say, we were one of the first to fail. It was a big guy that went down. And right. I remember coming to work on a Monday in July of 2007. And it's funny how I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but I can remember these specific things, right?
That's right.
And
you're a finance guy. If it relates to the finance side, you're going to remember.
I'm not even that good at finance, to be honest with you. I just got lucky on all that stuff. I sat next to smart people. And anyway, so we come to work on a Monday and we get an email that says we're temporarily not funding loans. So, I'm low man on the totem pole. I don't know anything different about it. I just think, the IT guys will fix that. By the end of the week, they still weren't funding loans. And then my manager came to me and said, look, I think they're going under. And again, this is the end of July of 2007. This was right when the crisis, that we were one of the first dominoes to fall. Yep. And so to answer your question, I never thought about getting out of the business because, man, you got good questions. No one's ever asked me that. Because I didn't even have a chance to think about it. So what happened was we were going under. The person I worked for, my mentor, who to this day I love dearly and still have the opportunity to work with, I trusted him immensely. I trusted him as a person. I trusted him to guide me and lead me. He'd been doing it in my career so far. And I just sat on the sidelines and I said, Keith, I go, what are we going to do? And he's like, I don't know. Just hang tight. I'm going to figure it out. And I just trusted that it would get figured out. And within a week, he called me and said, hey, I want you to come back to the old office. Can you meet me up here? I'm like, sure, I got nothing going on. So I drive up to the old office and his father, who has been in the mortgage business his whole life and got Keith in the mortgage business. And Keith's friend he grew up with, Jay, who was also in the mortgage business, but works at a different company. The three of them are sitting in my old office. And it's literally a scene out of a movie. Like the office had been ransacked. There's printers are missing and wires are hanging from the ceiling. It was just weird. And it's only a week had gone by and I'm sitting there and Keith goes, hey, this is my good friend, Jay. And there's the short version. He's like, we're going to start a mortgage company. We want you to come with us. And I was like, okay, let's go. So, I didn't think for a second I wasn't going to keep following him into battle. Right. And so lo and behold, that was the beginning of, VIP Mortgage in August of 2007, when I remember sitting in a residential loft that probably had 10 of us in it. And that was the beginning of the company. And, 15 years later, the VIP Mortgage company component, at least, has, over 500 employees.
That's a great story. I'm always intrigued by shifts in things that you have no control over, and then how you react to those things. And I'm intrigued because I'm usually not very good at it, but I try to pay attention and be better at it the next time. Right. Look, I've always had this feeling that people follow people, people leave people. It's not always the business. It's not always the model. It's not always a product or a quarter point or whatever the case may be. it really is sometimes the people you surround yourself with. And so in that moment, it sounds like you didn't give it a whole lot of thought. You didn't think to yourself, well, let me go back to see if I can get some interviews selling, medical devices or pharmaceuticals. You bolted onto some leadership, and that played out well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was also young. I mean, I was 26 at the time. Not that that's super young, but let's be honest, if that happened today, who knows where my mind would go, right? You're a little bit wiser. And I think I was shell shocked, and I was just, and I'm young, I'm single. I don't have any responsibilities other than my house and 2 dogs. Right. So it's like, and all that's of course different now, but yeah, I absolutely followed my general into battle, and no matter where he was going to pick, I was going to go. I didn't ask any questions.
The flip side of that is when that same moment in time, I was running the real estate finance division for a recruiting firm, and I wanted something bad to happen because what we had built was really positive in that division. And I'm careful because the person that owned this company is someone that I still give a ton of credit to. And there's things that come out of my mouth all the time, and I go back 25 years ago, I'm like, oh, that was him. And I always I give him credit. I joke around about that. But the way that they ran the business was just not what I felt was how I would do it, kind of thing. But in a silly way, I didn't know how to get out of it. And so the correction forced that, because it really hurt that company, and it put me in a position to go do something else. It wasn't until I wasn't making any money and I owned a home and I had kids, and you all of a sudden you wake up one night and say, what the heck did I just do? I can't do this. How do you, with that experience now going forward, are there things that you can take away from that help you coach people through the environment that we're in right now?
Yeah. I think so. I think there's some foundational, fundamental things I learned through all that, which is, first is dealing with adversity, dealing with things that you don't see coming. Now, we all knew rates were going to change and the market would change, but I think it's fair to say no one thought it would happen this drastically and this expeditiously, right? So it kind of shocked people that the first tremor of the earthquake, was hard and fast. So I think I've learned this just watching other leaders, that the calmer you are, the better everybody is. If your leadership is not visibly looking calm and I don't mean like an unauthentic calm, but like you can tell when people are faking it. Just like, hey, cool-headed, we're not going to freak out. Yeah, there's some nasty things going on, and we're not going to not talk about them, by the way. We're not going to brush them under the rug and pretend like everything's great and the refi boom's coming in 2 months, right? We're going to be honest and talk to our people about what's happening. But when they see that calmness in leadership, I think that helps squash some of the doubt. It helps build confidence with the group. And I think I was lucky to learn that through my mentorship through all the years with the leaders that I was behind. Is they were able to do 2 things. They were able to keep calm in what were very non-calm situations. And number 2, they were able to make fast decisions without overthinking, knowing that they might make the wrong decision. And I can tell you firsthand, Eric, my genetic wiring, I am wired to overthink things. And that's something I've worked on throughout the course of the last decade, is how do I get better at that? And I've had some wins there, but don't think it still doesn't happen. I still overthink a decision or 2 here and there. But when you're around people that make really fast decisions, it seems reckless, but then you start to realize that in some ways that's great leadership, because they're just like, look, this is my gut, I'm going with it. This is the direction we're going. This is the play we're going to run, and we're all running it, and they're confident about it, and it makes everyone else feel confident about it, right? And then they're also the first to say, okay, wrong play, we're going to do another play. But you find in leadership that very few people really want to make those high trajectory decisions in those, times of battle. Not to keep referencing the battlefield, I don't know why I'm doing that, but you know what I'm saying? And I just think
100%.
Yeah, I guess I have no idea if I just answered your question or not, but that's my answer.
Made total sense to me, Stuart. Don't worry.
Okay. I like how Tom keeps us straight. This is a good,
he just floats around as a ghost. So we don't actually see him anywhere. And he just chimes in when the ghost says it's time to chime in. You know,
He's like
Thomas,
that-
honestly, though, this what Stuart just said is so in line with conversations we've had with companies that we provide consult to. And you know, Stuart, I've seen 2 mistakes in the last couple of months. Well, I've seen lots of mistakes, and I'm sure we're making lots of mistakes too. But some of them are the simple things like what you just described. It's one thing to communicate with fear, because people can smell it and feel it. But what's just as bad is to not communicate at all. And there's leaders right now that are just not communicating with the street. And by the way, that then trickles down, because the regionals don't know what to talk about and the branch managers don't know what to talk about. And then, you know, really this is an industry that's full of free agents, quite frankly. I mean, you provide tools and resources, support leadership to originators that you're asking to go build a book of business through trust. Well, guess what? If you don't support them, they can pick that book of business up and take it somewhere else, because those referral partners, those customers, I trust that person. I kind of don't care where you are, because I'm going to assume you've got my best interest in mind. Well, that lack of communication right now is death for some of these companies. So no, you did answer my question. I appreciate it. Have you, it's not an easy thing to do though, right? I mean, there's moments in time right now where you know that you can remain calm and you can communicate with honesty and with humility and with grace, and also with strategy, by the way. Hey, I'm going to be honest with you, but here's the strategy. Here's what we're going to do. But you know, in the midst of that, when people are frozen by market conditions, where they feel fearful, they're going home, they're not sure, how am I going to pay for college right now? Or, you know, do I need to get another job or whatever? You know that there's an outcome to that communication sometimes that could be negative, where people just decide, I'm not with you anymore. Have you experienced that much? And I'm curious, just, you know, when you're in front of a group or one-on-one meeting with people, knowing in the seat that you sit in, you might be communicating that way, but you might also still have some attrition.
Yeah. Man, I've been really lucky. I have not been faced with really much of that in terms of, you know, like a major fear of somebody leaving our organization, which I guess sounds weird to say, but I just haven't. Now that doesn't mean we haven't had times where, you know, we've been a little bit, you know, I'll be the first to admit, sometimes I'm nervous going into these meetings, right? I mean,
Sure.
Sometimes when I have to speak in front of a bunch of people, I'm nervous, even though, you know, I've done it a million times and I'm fairly confident when I start doing it. But I think, you know, all of us are sometimes when we have all these eyeballs on us. And I think the only reason for that is you don't want to disappoint people, right? I mean, that's what it is. I'm not worried about mumbling my words or like all that stuff. I don't care about. We're human, but you just don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to get into a one-on-one with somebody and a teammate and disappoint them in the conversation, not bring what I should be bringing to the table, or have them leave and be thinking, I think I understood what he said, but I'm not really sure. Or the worst, which is they just completely heard something different than I was intending to say. Right. And
Right.
I think that's something that is really hard to keep a scorecard on, because, you know, I tell our people this all the time, like, look, people's pride will always get the best of them. And that's human nature. There's nothing wrong with it. And so you have to understand that, meaning they're not always going to tell you, I don't understand what you're saying, or this is how I heard it, because that seems confrontational to people, even though it's not. But people, you see what I'm saying? So, and people don't like that. It feels uncomfortable. So whereas, you know, anyone who knows me knows that I'm constantly asking, like, does that make sense? Are you good? Is this how you heard it? Like, I'm just making sure that I'm not like completely losing you in this thing. And I think that helps to some degree, but yeah, it's a tricky one.
It's a super tricky one. Are there moments through your career leading up to this point where, you know, you recall a failure, something that didn't work, a relationship that you wanted to maintain that you didn't? Yeah, we're all sort of the culmination of a lot of failures, actually, usually, especially people that are successful. You just didn't wake up one day and have $100+ million book of business. It doesn't work like that. Can you think of some things that in the moment felt like a tragedy, but looking back, you think actually needed that to happen?
Oh yeah. That's kind of how we learn, right? I call those the sear the brain moments, where this thing just happens and it sears your brain, and it's like touching the stove as a kid, right? You just know, like,
Right.
I will never screw that up again.
Right.
Yeah, there's a few, and of course some are not a big deal and some are maybe bigger deals, but I mean, I'll level with you, man. I remember once early on, the first few years, I was, I'm driving around the real estate offices, and I got my shirt and tie on, and I'm dropping off donuts, and I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing, or I'm being told I should be doing. And I just can't get anything to happen. I'm just getting, not no, but right, I'm just not getting anything. And I literally remember once pulling over into this dirt lot. It's actually close to here, which is funny. And it took everything in me, a somewhat grown man, to hold back my tears. I was just like, and I was about to quit. I'm like, I don't even know if I can do this anymore. And I think about that sometimes. It's just funny. And then, you somehow power through it, and you grit through it. One that is probably one of my favorite stories that I like to tell loan officers who are kind of learning and figuring out what to do and what not to do is, we know how important our phone is to the business, right? I tell people, like, look, in the beginning, as much as you probably don't want to be chained to a job, you can't look at it that way. Like, you're building a business, it's a startup. It's going to take a couple of years. You need to be 24/7 ready to go to help people, because that's what they're going to remember. And it's a huge customer service ad in an industry, by the way, that's the 5 minutes ago industry. Everybody wants it 5 minutes ago. So if you don't build a system or build a reputation or a model around sense of urgency, you will not make it.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. And so I was, probably 4 or 5 years into my career, and I get this big meeting. I don't even know how. I call on this guy. He's a huge agent in town. I bring Keith, the guy I've talked about, with me, because I'm like, I don't even know if I know how to do this in this meeting. And I'm like, please come with me. So he comes with me. We go to this guy's office, and it's like, it's your classic, like, big corner office. He's got like signed photos of him and like celebrities and like Sylvester Stallone. And I remember like being so intimidated. I'm like, dude, I don't even, who is
He's
this
got
guy?
the big mahogany desk with the bourbon sitting on the side and the glasses ready to go. Yeah.
Oh, totally, man. I mean, just like everything you can imagine. But to quickly back up, the way I got the meeting, I saw him in a magazine, and he was sitting in the grass with like his 2 Labrador retrievers, right? And I grew up with labs, and at the time I had 2. And I'm like, okay, common interest. What can I do here? So there used to be this like fancy dog bakery in town. And I went there and I got these 2 huge custom bones made, and I put his dog's names on them because they were in the magazine. So I didn't have to like figure it out. And I sent him to his office, and he called me, and he's like, hey, I got your gift. I'll take a meeting with you. And I'm like, oh my God, it worked. And so then I'm super nervous, right? So I go to the meeting, and, meeting goes fine. And he's super intimidating guy, just in nature anyway, the way he just presents himself. And he's like, look, are you going to be available every time I call you? I said, absolutely. You call me anytime, I will pick up my phone. So this is, I don't know, like midway during the week. That first weekend, I'll never forget it. Saturday, I'm sitting by my pool, and I'm like doing whatever. And I remember getting out, and all day I'm checking my phone, right? I'm just like waiting to see if he's going to test me or call me. No, nothing. And then I finally at one point go to grab my phone, and I'm like, what's going on? My phone's dead. Like, it wouldn't. And I'm like, oh no. And I just had that pit in my stomach. Like, I swear to God, this guy's going to call me when my phone is dead. So I'm trying to find a charger, and it's dead for like 30 minutes. I plug this thing in, Eric. I mean, you can't make this up. I have 3 voicemails from it. The first one is like, Stuart, thought you were going to answer your phone. Click. The second one is like, Stuart, seriously? I thought you said you'd be available. Click. And the third one was like, you had your chance. Click. I mean, that's literally all I said. And I'm just like, like lost all confidence and morale. And it ended, man. I tried to save it. I ended up calling him. I said, and I'm like, it's the dog ate my homework story, right? He's not going to believe
Totally.
it.
Right.
And so that stayed with me, just to be like, man, you have just got to be on like that. What a bonehead move. Your phone wasn't charged. Give me a break, dude.
Did you tell him you were lounging by the pool, by the way?
I don't
love that that's
remember
what
those
Thomas picked
details,
up.
Thomas, but
I missed your call. I was lounging by the pool.
Yeah.
I missed the call.
Yeah, I was not caring about work when you were trying to call me when I told you I work 7 days a week. Yeah, I don't remember what I told him. I'd just be making up. But anyway, but yeah, and then I've had, there's been many moments after that. But
there's so many good stories in that, though, like going to the research that you did to find some custom connection between the two of you to put you in a position to just have an audience. And truthfully, I think that's something that, I saw Dave Savage post something recently about kind of the old school, it's time to make phone calls again. Like, loans aren't falling off trees right now. And if you haven't been doing it, you're behind all the people that continue to find time to do it while the times were good and while you were busy. But it's not that simple. Like a wide net is not always the proper net. If you can bring it in and find the opportunities that you have some connection with, even if it's a dog and you saw him in a magazine and you went above and beyond. I love that story. But then the next story of you losing it, I mean, this sounds like a scene out of Pursuit of Happiness or something, right? I'm picturing you running from the bus with this 1970s, copying machine in your hand, and you left something on the bus and you got the meeting and you can't get it off the bus. And okay, so I do have a question though. Did you ever run into this guy again?
I don't know if I did. I honestly think he ended up giving me a second chance, and I begged and pleaded or whatever. And I think he gave me a second chance, and he sent me, I think, one client. It was like an international client that didn't work out. And I never really ended up working with him. It was just like, it was lost, but oh, well.
Yeah, I love that story.
It was a life lesson. That's a life lesson story that you hold on to, even if it didn't work out. At the end of the day, you didn't do business with them, but you learned quite a bit. Now that's stuff that you pass on to others who are looking to you for guidance, right? And you can lean on stories like that. And that's what makes those interactions with the two, we're calling the two Labrador man,
Yeah.
That's what makes it so impactful, whether it worked out in the end or not. I mean, it really did work out because you got this killer story out of it.
Well, and you're also clearly not somebody that either listens to or surrounds yourself with people that are full of excuses. Because I'm sure there were plenty of people that you could have gone to that would said, well, man, screw that guy. Your phone died. What are you supposed to do? I mean, it happens. That's not how you saw it. How you saw it was your job was to make sure you were doing everything you could to answer the phone. And if the phone went dead, that's on you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way that you saw it. I mean, there's so many coaching.
No matter how you look at it.
What do you do outside of the business? I mean, you got to be a super busy guy. The amount of business that you do, building, Bison, which I know is not easy. You were also talking about startups, and I think we're being reminded right now that a startup mentality, even if your business is no longer startup, however you define that, a startup mentality is what provides sustainability through all business cycles. It's because you're always looking for a better way to do something or to improve or create an efficiency. We get very lackadaisical with that, but that's also very stressful. So my question is, what do you do outside of the business that helps you alleviate some of that stress maybe?
I'm kind of boring. I wouldn't say I have hobbies. Man, I just love to laugh. I love to be around friends. I love to be around family. I love to hang out. I obviously love to do stuff. I love to do all the normal things, travel and be outdoors and do all sorts of stuff. And I'm part of a few charity organizations here in town that I'm really passionate about that I just have a lot of fun with. So that's great. But as far as actually blowing off steam, I mean, I think it's just like, getting with the boys and hanging out, and I try to keep on the exercise regimen just to keep from keep some years on my life here. But
it's funny when we're young, we work out to see the results in the mirror, and as we get older, we work out so that we don't die.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we stay healthier and we can be more efficient and more productive throughout the day.
Well, and I think that's it. I think working out these days is more of it's more of like a mindset thing, right? It changes your mindset in the morning or whenever you work out. And I know that's the big deal for me, and kind of sets the tone and just makes you feel good. So So yeah, I don't have one specific thing. I'm like, oh, I'm a big golfer. I'm a big this, I'll kind of do whatever, man. And I'm always on my feet doing stuff. And I just, love having a good time.
Let's talk about Bison for a second. So number one, I'd love for you to tell the story of where the Bison logo came from, because I really do love it. And then also maybe just some story around why, because and you were sharing with me in a conversation a couple of weeks ago that nothing's never as smooth as you think it's going to be. Nothing ever, if you could do it again, there's probably a lot you would change about the progression and the timing and how, what you were doing along the way to make it efficient. The reality is somebody like you that had built a valuable business. If it was just about money, you probably could have done some other things to leverage that. So I'm curious, why start something that really is kind of a startup, right? And to do business the way that you want to do business. Why go that route versus maybe the easy route? And then number two, tell us about the logo and Bison.
Happy to. So I guess the why do something that's not the easy button question. I think as you evolve as a person and as a professional throughout your career, like I can tell you, I've had many times of burnout, right, in this career. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us can attest that. And I've got, what's great is when you get to a point in life where you have enough friends, of a network of people that are also professionals and been doing what they've been doing for a long time, and you start realizing it's the reticular activator, right, which is I'm going to go buy a white truck, and next thing I know, I see white trucks everywhere, right? My wife's pregnant. Next thing I know, everywhere I go, there's a pregnant gal. And so it's kind of similar. Like you start talking about it and you go, God, I feel kind of burnt out. And next thing you know, it's like, oh, well, your buddy's burnt out too. And you thought he had the perfect job because it all looks good from the outside, but whatever industry, he's sick of making the same widget too, right? So it becomes this thing where you just realize it's normal and there's nothing wrong with you. It's just like you're human. You want to switch it up. You don't want to eat the same cereal every single day for 20 years, right? So, I've evolved through some of those, and you kind of have to reinvent yourself. And sure, in those moments, Eric, when you asked earlier about, would you have thought about doing something outside of the mortgage business? In the moment you asked me about, no. In these other moments I'm telling you about, the answer is yes, right? I definitely thought like, okay, what else is out there? Like, is this really all I'm going to do forever? And then we all make our own decisions, and I try and reinvent myself to some degree and move past that and move past the complacency that just naturally will happen as you plateau, in certain parts of your career. And this was just a kind of another version of that. And this one wasn't so much projected or propelled, by burnout, but more of just like this burning thing inside me for years of like, gosh, like what if I just did my own thing? I just wonder what it would look like. And never did anything with it. It was just a thought that just would pop up every once in a while, right? It's like the game whack-a-mole. The mole would come up and I'd pop him down and bury it deep down and never talk about it again until he popped back up. And I just think, cheesy as it sounds, I think the stars kind of aligned in a weird way when the catalyst moment happened where I said, I think it's now or never if I'm going to do it. So like, do it now or forever hold your peace. Right. And you're not, and by the way, dude, you're not allowed to regret not doing it if you decide not to do it today. Like, it's like that moment with yourself. And, I mean, that's kind of the why. That's why I decided I wanted to take this other trajectory. And in that moment, it wasn't about the risk. It wasn't about all the scary things that came with it. It was about just the excitement of checking a box that had always floated out there for me that I just wanted to check. And then I got into all the scary stuff after that. But I wasn't thinking about all that at that point, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. And I love what you just said. I think a lot of people I think most people can completely relate with what you just said. I don't think most people can relate with what you did though. I mean, we all do it. You do it also. There's plenty of other things that you think about, pops into your brain. It's the whack-a-mole, right? Something pops up. You probably should do something, but you just don't for whatever reason, because it's hard or because it's going to take time or because it's going to take my eye off the ball of this other thing. And sometimes those are not excuses. They're actually good reasons. But are you going to go your whole life and never pull out that mallet and try to hit one of the moles, which is what you've just done? And it's not easy. You know, one thing I've learned about being involved in a tech startup is what you just described is almost every day. And as much as it can be really frustrating and sometimes discouraging, there's never a lack of something that's also really exciting. It's that next thing on the whiteboard. You know, it's that next thing on the roadmap, right? So no, I can relate to that, but I think that a lot of people might listen to this and think, you know what, I need to go whack a mole. I need to do what Stuart did. And look, for some people, it might. I was at some meetings a couple months back, and there were some really good social media content people there, and there were so many people attracted to them because they knew they should probably be doing something on social media, co-branding with their referral partners, putting out some educational topics or just something, but they weren't whacking the mole, right? And so they then found a partner that could help them go get started, just go start. I think we're in a market right now where there's the winners, the ones that we're going to see on the other side. Those are the ones taking a little bit of risk right now. Those are the ones that are not afraid of this market. They're the ones that see, man, if I can muscle through this and maybe prove some concept on some things I haven't been doing, in 18 months from now, I'm going to be up that list in a way that I never could have been had this market not happened. So now, okay, tell us about Bison though. Where'd it come from? I think you already told me the story once, but tell me the Bison story.
Like as far as the name of the company?
Well, the name and the logo, because it's not just a bison. Like the way it's drawn out is really super cool.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. So, you know, once we decided we were going to start a company, you know, my partner was on me. He's like, we got to name this thing. It's like, you know, you can't get to legal documents. There's so many things that you can't even start to do until you have a name, right? So it's
right.
like naming your kid. And I say that because sometimes it's, you know, not easy. And also you learn very quickly, like, don't ask people what they think, right? Because you are asking for trouble, believe me. So, so what we did is heavily reluctantly, we hired a branding company. And I say reluctantly because, you know, one of my partners, there's three of us. One of them was like, yes, we have to do this. I was like, I think we probably should do this. It was expensive. It's kind of why I was like, and then another one of my partners is like, what do we need? We really need a branding company. Seriously, we can figure this out ourselves. But we all decided we're doing it. If we're gonna go in and be serious about this. And it ended up being the best thing we ever did. And it's funny, the third partner I just told you about, who was the guy that was like, no, he would, coming out of all this, he was like, oh my God, that was the best thing ever. And it like opened his eyes up. Right. So we had some major branding sessions with this group who did a phenomenal job. And but even then we didn't quite have a name yet. And I'm from the Southwest. I'm, I like to think I'm somewhat of a cowboy at heart, inside. And so I wanted something Western, strong. We threw out some names I got made fun of.
Give me one name that you got made fun of. Come on.
Well, I threw out Ranch. Okay. What the name wasn't going to be Ranch, but I was like, maybe we can put, because I was thinking about what evokes a place I want to be, right? I want to be on a ranch. I want to be somewhere where it's open arms. Everyone's just authentic with each other. Everything's great. It's open air. I just want to, like, if someone said to you, hey, Eric, do you want to come to my ranch? You're immediately going to go like, that sounds like a cool place. Right?
I'm in. Let's go.
Exactly. So I'm like, let's evoke a place people want to be at. Like I didn't just want to name the company just a cool name. I want to have serious meaning, not only for us, but for people in the future we would bring on that they could attach to it. And I frankly feel like most companies have done a bad job at this, especially mortgage companies. No offense to anybody out there. I just think there's a lot of weird names I just don't get. And believe me, I'm not saying there's plenty of people out there, by the way, that I'm sure look at our name and be like, that doesn't make any sense. and that is, I welcome it. It's fine. And so I said ranch, and then my buddy's wife's like, you mean like Hidden Valley Ranch, like the ranch dressing?
Oh man.
Ouch.
Here we go. So then that spiraled out of control. And then and we had our wives on this text chain too, right? And we're all like, traveling, and we're throwing out different names. And anyway, so, and then one of our buddies threw out, what about like urban or like meadows? And I'm like, dude, that sounds like a retirement home. Like that's not
It does.
right. And so I'm like, so all these funny little things happen. And then I'm driving in again, one of these weird moments I remember vividly. I'm driving in my truck to this breakfast meeting, and it's just like on my mind. I'm like, we have to name this company. And I just started thinking about like the mortgage process and what the journey of getting a mortgage is like. And some of the things I've told my team over the years, which is, the mortgage industry is chaos, and you can't perfect it. At least I can't figure it out. Someone maybe has. And all you can do is manage the chaos to the best of your ability. And if you can build systems to manage the chaos, you should be able to come out okay. And I started thinking about chaos. And I started thinking about, like, how your brain works, and it never makes any sense. And I'm just quietly in my car listening to music as I'm driving, thinking through all this. And then the chaos goes to storm. And I'm thinking about like, it's like a storm, and like we're trying. And then it hits me that I remembered at some point, someone had told me that the buffalo is the only animal that runs into the storm. And then I sat there and I went, oh, into the storm. And I went, buffalo. And then I went, not buffalo, bison. And just a quick pause and rewind. The catalyst to all this happening was when I went on an RV trip in the summer of 2020, during the first summer of COVID. I did the quintessential RV trip, got the family out of the house, had a great time, by the way. If you haven't done it, you should do it. And we went to Yellowstone, and we saw bison, and I'd never really seen them in that way before. And I just like that was already in my mind, like how cool of an experience that was. So it had some version of a correlation. And on that trip is when this first conversation happened with my partners on like, it's now or never kind of deal. And so there's all sorts of weird links to the name Bison. So I come up with Bison. As I'm parking, I text my guys. I'm like, Bison. And immediately it's like, hell yeah, love it. And my one buddy went to CU, the Colorado Buffs, and he's like,
he loved it.
I love it. And I need to put those two together. And so anyway, and then that's where Bison came from. So the meaning of Bison is a lot, not just personally because the trip and all of that, but it is this mindset of our culture of like, we're going to face problems head on. We're not going to hide. When adversity strikes, we're going to go straight through it. The bison's the only animal that runs straight through the storm with the herd, because they figure the faster they get through it, the less damage that happens. And then what was cool is in our branding session, one of the guys at this branding company grew up in, I think, Wyoming or Montana, one of the two. It was Montana. And he like knows everything about the bison. He's like, oh my God, dude. He's like, did you know this? And he like names like 40 crazy facts. And we're like, dude, this is just getting cooler and cooler. So it's just a cool animal, and there's a lot of cool things there. And then I knew from day one, I did not want mortgage in the name. I just want to be different. And and then we struggled with like, do we do Bison Financial or Bison Capital or whatever the other, names that correlate sort of with finance. And I didn't really want to do that. Now I will level with you guys. There was a lot of stress over that piece. We went back and forth. Like we got to a point where we were getting logos made and everything. And we were all like, did we screw up? Should we call it Bison Mortgage? Because we made the mistake of telling a few people, and they're like, ooh, Bison Ventures. Like, what do you guys do? I don't even, and then we're like, shit, we screwed up. Sorry. I didn't mean to cuss.
No, we're again, I have no sponsors. I'm not getting dropped.
Okay, I know Thomas is going to leak that on the live version. And
I took a note of the time. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, good.
Thanks, Thomas.
So anyway, but the branding company told us, like, you want it to evoke people asking questions. You want it to be not so. And then ventures, so ventures means, textbook definition is undertaking a daring or risky journey. And so that resonated with us. And then on top of that, I like the idea that we don't know where this organization goes. And this is me, like, future crazy, like what if scenarios that may never, ever happen, but it's kind of fun to dream big, and what if we end up having a silo that's a podcast silo? What if we have a a recruiting silo, an insurance silo, then they can all house under Bison Ventures, right? So it doesn't limit us to this one thing. But that's why the tagline is informed mortgage lending, which came from how we built the business originally, which was having the heart of a teacher, highly consultative, really informing people on their options and arming them with the information they need to make the best decision so they're comfortable. And so we took all that and now that made us happy because like, well, at least mortgage is in the tagline. So when we put that out there, people understand what we do. So I apologize. That was probably the longest answer to naming a company, but that's the story.
That was so good. So let's start to, I mean, that was really great. It was like a drop the mic moment. So let's start to close this out. When we kill the podcast, don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you for a minute offline. Tell me again, because you said the textbook definition so well of ventures. Say that again.
Undertaking a daring and risky journey.
Which relates to so much of what you and your team do, right? I mean, if you're 100% commission, that's a daring and risky journey. Anybody that's buying a home, especially their first home, that is one hell of a daring and risky journey. And it takes an advocate, a consultant, an expert, a friend, a trusted advisor to carry you through those things. So I didn't know that was the textbook definition of ventures, and it makes me like it makes me like the name even more. Before we break, is there anything that you didn't talk about that you want to mention? Or
No, I'm good, man.
I knew this would be fun, and it was, and super, super informative. I know when you're the one doing the talking, Stuart, you start to wonder, did I say anything that anybody really wants to hear? But I promise you, Thomas and I are already thinking about, there's a lot of really good nuggets in this that I'm excited to use and get out into the ecosystem, so to speak. So thanks for coming on the Walk podcast. We're gonna cut it, but don't go anywhere. But thanks for jumping on. Anybody wants to find out more about Stuart, you can find him on LinkedIn, Bison Ventures. That's not why we do this, but nonetheless, it was killer having you on, my friend.
I appreciate you guys inviting me. I'm flattered. I don't take it lightly. And you're right. Hopefully I said something that made any version of sense. And that's just my life every day. I go to bed wondering if I did anything, but as long as we're smiling and having fun, I figure it'll work out. So I appreciate you guys.
Kill it right there, Thomas. That was it.